moment, the entire library seemed to fall silent. Her own name stared back at her from the page. Clara Bennett. Detective Ryan Hale picked up the book, flipping through its pages. Most were empty. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked. Clara shook her head. "The names appear before people disappear." Ryan looked unconvinced, but the fear on Clara's face told him she believed every word. Arthur Collins quietly stepped forward. "You don't understand," the old librarian whispered. "The book has chosen its next keeper." Ryan frowned. "Keeper?" Arthur hesitated. "My grandfather worked here before me. He told me stories about the hidden room. The book doesn't predict disappearances, it creates them." Clara stared at him. "What do you mean?" Arthur looked toward the basement stairs. "The people inside the book aren't dead. They're trapped." That night, after the library closed, Clara, Ryan, and Arthur descended into the archive room. The hidden passage was waiting for them. The black book sat once again on the wooden pedestal. But something had changed. The room was larger. The walls stretched farther into darkness than before, and at the far end stood a door Clara had never seen. It was made of dark wood and covered in silver symbols. Arthur stopped walking. "We should leave," he whispered. But Clara stepped forward. On the door, beneath decades of dust, someone had carved a message. "The keeper must choose." Ryan pushed the door open. Beyond it was another library, an impossible library. Rows of endless shelves disappeared into the darkness. Thousands of books lined the walls, each bearing a person's name. The air was completely still. Then Clara heard footsteps. A woman emerged from between the shelves. She wore an old librarian's uniform. Her gray hair was tied neatly behind her head. Clara recognized her immediately from the newspaper clipping. Margaret Whitmore, the librarian who had vanished in 1987. She hadn't aged a day. "You found the door," Margaret said softly. Arthur stepped back in horror. "How are you alive?" Margaret looked around at the endless shelves. "I'm not sure I am." Clara held up the black book. "What is this place?" Margaret sighed. "Long ago, someone created the library to preserve every story, every memory, every life. But the book became corrupted. Now, every 20 years, it chooses someone to guard it." Clara looked down at her own name. "And if I refuse?" Margaret's expression darkened. "Then the library will continue taking people?" Suddenly, lights flickered above them. Books began falling from the shelves. Far in the distance, a low rumble echoed through the endless room. Margaret's eyes widened. "It's waking up." The black book flew open in Clara's hands. New names began appearing across dozens of pages. Ryan grabbed Clara's arm. "We need to go. Now." But Clara couldn't move. At the very bottom of the final page, one last name slowly appeared. Ryan Hale. The ground beneath them trembled. The library doors slammed shut, and from somewhere deep within the endless shelves, something began walking toward them. The sound of footsteps echoed through the endless library. Slow, heavy, getting closer. Ryan pulled Clara backward, but she couldn't take her eyes off the black book in her hands. The pages continued turning by themselves, filling with names faster and faster. Margaret Whitmore grabbed Clara's arm. "Listen to me," she said urgently. "The library is breaking. It hasn't chosen a keeper in 20 years. Arthur stared into the darkness between the shelves. "What happens if no one accepts?" Margaret's face grew pale. "The barrier collapses." As if answering her, the ground shook violently beneath them. Books toppled from shelves. The lights overhead flickered. The footsteps grew louder. Somewhere in the endless darkness beyond the shelves, something was moving toward them. Books crashed to the floor as the hidden library shook around them. Ryan grabbed Clara's arm. "We have to leave." Margaret Whitmore stepped forward, her face pale. "You don't understand. The library won't let anyone leave until the next keeper is chosen. Clara stared at the black book in her hands. New names continued to appear across its pages. "Who created this place?" she asked. Margaret hesitated. "No one knows. The stories say the first keeper built the library centuries ago to preserve every memory and every life, but over time, it changed. It became hungry." Arthur backed toward the door. "There has to be another way." Margaret slowly shook her head. "There is only one." The rumbling beneath the floor intensified. Suddenly, Ryan cried out. Dark shadows spread between the shelves, wrapping around his legs and pulling him backward. "Clara!" Without thinking, she ran after him. The black book slipped from her hands and fell open on the stone floor. At the bottom of the final page, new words appeared. "Choose." Clara looked up. Ryan was disappearing into the darkness. Beside her, Margaret spoke quietly. "If you become the keeper, the library will release him. And if I refuse?" Margaret lowered her eyes. "It will take him. Just as it took the others." Clara looked at Ryan, then at Ethan Moore, who had suddenly appeared among the shelves. Behind him stood dozens of missing people, teachers, students, librarians, everyone the book had stolen over the years. Arthur's voice trembled. There must be another way. Clara glanced at the black book one last time. Then she noticed something hidden beneath the pedestal. An old journal. She opened it. The final entry had been written by the very first keeper. The library survives only while the book survives. Clara understood instantly. Without hesitation, she grabbed the book and ran toward the fireplace at the center of the endless hall. Margaret's eyes widened. "No!" The shadows rushed toward her. Ryan shouted her name. Clara threw the black book into the flames. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the library screamed. The sound echoed through every shelf. Books burst open, lights shattered overhead. The endless rows began collapsing one after another. The shadows vanished. Ryan fell to the floor as the darkness released him. Around them, Ethan and the others slowly faded back into the world they had lost. "Run!" Arthur yelled. The four of them sprinted toward the door as the hidden library crumbled behind them. The moment they crossed back into the basement archives, the door slammed shut. Silence. The secret room was gone. Only an empty wall remained. Weeks later, Ravenswood Public Library reopened. Ethan Moore had returned to his family. The disappearances had ended. Margaret Whitmore was never seen again. On Clara's final evening at the library, she packed the last box from her desk and walked toward the exit. Halfway there, she stopped. Sitting alone on the return cart was a small black book. No title, no library sticker. Her smile faded. "Saparis." Slowly, she opened the first page. 3 words appeared in fresh ink. "See you soon."